was born in a small village called Periyamudalya Chavadi, which is a fishing village in South India. I grew up speaking fluent Tamil and fluent French before I spoke a word of English. So it was kind of a confusing but interesting childhood, where I would be playing cricket in the gullies of my village, and when we saw a foreigner walk past, we'd be like, look at the white person, and I would have no awareness of the fact that I am Caucasian. So I started acting actually very early on in school. We used to have a drama festival every year, and I loved to be part of it. And my first role was a tree. When I was about 8 or something. My second role was a sheep in the Nativity. And then when I was about 15, I finally got my due and played Titania, Queen of Fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream. So it was a long and a hard journey to get there, but I think I always loved it. I always loved performing. Devdi. That was my first role, and I auditioned for that. And when I did, my Hindi was very weak. I could basically just manage with autos like aage se right, and then I did the audition, and I left the office. And about 15 minutes later, I was actually waiting for my bus to go back to Bandra, so it was in Versova. And 15 minutes later, I get a call. It's Anurag Kashyap, and he's saying, "You can act. Come back." So I found out later that Anurag had actually seen my portfolio pictures, which were like, modeling, sexy bikini photos. And he'd said, "No, I don't want to audition another, model. I want a real actor." And he just sort of rejected me on the basis of that portfolio. But thankfully, Rucha Patak, who was working at UTV, had gone to Blue Mountain School. And she had read in my CV that I went to Hebron School, and she knew about the school. So she was kind of curious, and she thought there might be something to me. And that's how I got the audition. And I'm glad I did. Margarita with a Straw, probably one of the most difficult films to prepare for in terms of process. I did about 6 to 8 months of prep for the film, where Shonali Bose, my director, told me I wasn't allowed to do anything else. And she was right, because it really paid off, and I really got into the character. It's just an added bonus that I got the national award for it. Yay! What's a game changer? I guess something which realigns you as a person, like how sometimes, we have a problem with our back or like a spinal issue or something, and then you go to a physiotherapist or you go for these Kerala massages, and they just like set it back in place. So it's a little bit like that metaphorically. I feel that a game changer is something where, you feel like, yeah, life is fine, you're going along and it's okay and things are good, but there's something just a little off. And then when that gets set into place and you're like, oh, now I know what I need to do, that's a game changer. I think it's very hard to come up with one favorite book, but one of the books that most influenced me was The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, which I read when I was a teenager. My most recent favorite holiday destination was Sinai in Egypt, where there's the blue hole and you can see some of the most incredible fish diving underwater. One of the very underrated films that I saw from I think a couple of years ago was Manchester by the Sea. I thought it was a really, really good film. Favorite movie that I've acted in? I think Devdi, just because it's the first one and you learn so much on your first film. The party starter in my life is probably Mitali Iyengar. She's my best friend from school, and we always get into a lot of trouble together. I like winding up at the end of a long day at work by running a bath, putting on some candles, some nice music, and pouring myself a flute of Chandon.